Hi and welcome to another episode of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. It's me, Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it as always. This podcast is one that I put together thinking the other day to myself, what would I fix, or what would I tell my younger bonsai self to shortcut some of the issues that I think a lot of people experience. So that's what this podcast is about. It's going to be about my learnings and what I wish I could have told myself years ago, which hopefully might help anyone who's listening. So thanks for sticking around, and let's see if we can get this one done. So in thinking about what I would tell my younger self, one of the very first things I think, which is really super important and seems like such common sense now looking back, is look after your tools. The more care you put into your tools, the sharper they are, the more well looked after they are, the better maintained they are, the better they're stored, the better your work's going to be on your bonsai. You know, there was times when, if it was raining, I'd accidentally leave tools out in the rain. They'd rust up. Then I'd have to clean them, but it might take me, a good week or so to get back and clean them. Whereas, now I store them properly. They're maintained. The blades are sharpened. I always clean them thoroughly between different trees. Sharpen them consistently. Make sure they've always got a really sharp bevel on the blade. And if there is any damage done to them, it's rectified immediately. If I, for instance, get a chip in a blade or the blade starts to splay a little bit and maybe doesn't come into perfect contact, rather than waiting or hesitating or putting it aside for another day's work, do it straight away, right away on the spot. Make sure that I get those things back into their best possible condition that I can, so that when I do use them and when it is a crucial time for me to be doing something really, really quickly, then I know that they're going to be perfect. So that would be the first thing I would say. Yep. And tool storage, that's a no-brainer to me now. Whether it's inside a container or whether it's in a tool roll. I use tool rolls for all my different types of tools. I have tool rolls for my day-to-day. I have tool rolls for large work. I have tool rolls for carving. Make sure all my tools are in the right order. Bit OCD about it, but it makes a big difference when I'm working on my trees that I use the right tool for the right job, because it's always in the right spot. It makes a big difference. And also, I like having tools available for people when they come into the workshop, and I always want to make sure that they're in the best condition so someone else's bonsai gets the same amount of care as what mine does. So that would be number one. Look after your tools a lot better than possibly what you did very early days. The second would be, and this is one that really struck a chord with me, is get good guidance. Don't just take guidance from anybody. Don't just listen to everybody that wants to talk to you about your trees or your care of your trees, but really search out someone that or a group of people that are like-minded, that feel the same way, that love their bonsai the way that you do, that maybe appreciate the same style of bonsai like you do, because we all have our own individual look and feel and concept of bonsai in our mind. So you want to find someone that you don't clash with, that you can bounce ideas off, that you can talk to, that you can maybe get reassurance from, or just a bit of a subtle, yep, you're on the right path, keep going, because that good guidance is so hard to come by. There's lots of places you can seek it, bonsai nurseries, bonsai clubs, bonsai professionals, whatever it is, but just make sure that you've done the investigation and done the time. So from my experience, I've found that the biggest acceleration I had in my personal bonsai learning was when I got that link, when I got that association, and I got that support structure, that I really took leaps and bounds ahead in how I looked after my bonsai, and also how quickly they developed two being on a certain path. I've said it many times before that I think one of the worst things that can possibly ever be done by any of us, me included in this, is the chop and change method of caring for your bonsai. This week you're listening to person A, you're doing things a certain way. Next week, person B comes along and says, no, not like that, like this. You go, yep, cool, doing it like that now. Third week comes around, person C, you get the gist. It's really, really inconsistent for your learnings because you never know, you never actually put enough time in to see which method works or which one is going to allow you to reach the full potential with your bonsai because you're not in the game long enough with them. A couple of weeks here or there is nowhere near long enough to work out whether it's going to work or whether it's not. And that's where you can accelerate your learning by looking at someone's bonsai. Yep, love that, love what they're doing. Okay, how do they do it? Right, that's the path, that's the method I'm going to use. And then once you start it, stick with it. That person, whoever it is, obviously has been caring for their trees for a certain period of time and they're developing a certain way and that certain way appeals to you. So you need to make sure that you consistently stick along the same path. So getting good guidance for your bonsai journey is absolutely crucial. So that would be one thing I would knuckle through my thick skull very early to say, don't chop and change. Find something that you can gel with, that you can find symmetry with, and then just stick with it. Just see it out. Stay consistent on the path. Then linked with that, I also thought it's good to get good guidance and good to get a pathway, but you need to make sure that your skill set is up to scratch as well. You need to practice. It's like anything, it's pick anything, playing piano or football or cricket or whatever it is, whether it's a sport or it's a hobby, to get good at whatever it is, it takes time, it takes practice. Not everyone that walks into a yoga studio picks it up very first minute of sitting down in that class. It takes time and dedication to make sure that you go back time and time and time again so you can allow yourself to get good enough with enough practice. And bonsai is that. Bonsai is about practicing your skill and not settling for, that being blunt, not settling for rubbish. If your wiring's good enough but not great, is that really the best it possibly can be? I don't think it is. If your pruning technique is okay but not great, is that the best? If you're repotting, you might be able to get a tree repotted in 3 minutes. Awesome. Is it done to the best of your ability and the best for the bonsai? I seriously doubt it. So you need to make sure that you're match fit. I heard someone say a very long time ago, with your skills that apply to bonsai, you need to make sure that you're match fit, which means that at any particular point in time, you can perfectly perform the task. Under pressure is going to be a different thing, but if you take your time at the start and you get your wiring technique right, if you get your pruning perfect and do it over and over and over again, then when you're under pressure, that becomes your default. So there's a story that relates to training for running, which I'm a runner, I enjoy running, and one of the things is that say the first 15 Ks of a run is your practice for the last 5 Ks of the run. So what you do in the first 15, you belt it through your skull to say, yep, this is what I'm going to do. This is how my posture is going to be. This is how my legs are going to feel. This is how my foot's going to impact the ground. This is where my shoulders are going to be. This is everything. This is my headrest position, and this is where I'm focusing. And you do that while you're not tired. So then when you're exhausted, when you know things are about to finish and you want to slouch and you want to drop your posture, you go to what the default is. And the default is what you do when it's easy. And I think that bonsai is very similar in that, if you practice things over and over and over again so they're perfect, then when you need it, when you're tired, when you've been wiring a tree for 5.5 hours and you're exhausted, the technique will still be good. It won't get sloppy, which means that your desired outcome will be achieved even though you're buggered. So do what your default is all the time. Be as good as you possibly can for every second that you spend with your trees, and really perfect your skills. That's the third one that I'd be telling myself. All right, so now the next couple, they sort of go hand in hand. The first one is, I would tell myself, buy the best stock that you can afford at that time. So you want to make sure that you're not just spending good money on rubbish. It's not about the amount of money that you spend. It's buying the best stock that you can afford at the time. So when you're hunting through and looking at bargain basement trees at a nursery, they're great. They're fun. Everyone's bought them. I've bought them, and you look at them and think, God, it's got so much potential, and it was only $2. That's awesome. But then over time, you suddenly realise that a tree that's in the bargain basement bin is one that needs a hell of a lot of time and effort to bring it back to a base level. And on the way back to the base level, more often than not, anything that's of character or attractive on that bargain basement tree generally tends to die, and you've got to start it again. So if you're in it for the long haul and you're happy to put in 15, 20 years developing something, then that's great. But what I would tell myself is buy the best stock that you can afford at the time. So the best stock is not the cheapest. The best stock is the one that has the best root structure. It's got the best trunk. It's got the best nabari. It's got the best branch placement. But it's got to be also hand in hand what you can afford. I mean, it's no good, looking at a Ferrari when you can afford a Toyota Corolla. Something a billionth of the price is all you can afford. There's no point looking at trees that are $10,000 if you can only afford to spend $100. But if you're going to spend $100 on a tree, make sure it's the best tree that you can get for your $100. That's what I would tell myself, and that's what I didn't do. And the next point is, which goes hand in hand, is quality over quantity. I used to have this desire to have a lot of bonsai because I was like so many people that listen to this podcast that it was about numbers. I used to love acquiring trees. I used to love buying bonsai or pre-bonsai or stock at nurseries or anything that I could potentially turn into a bonsai. I would have it in a heartbeat. But you run short of time pretty quick, and then things tend to suffer. And if they start dying, that's the worst possible scenario you can have for anybody that loves trees. So you've got to pause yourself, and this is what I would tell myself, is it's quality over quantity any day of the week, and buying the best stock that you can afford at the time. If you have an absolute desire to go and buy one bonsai, don't come home with 10. If you've got $100, don't buy 10 at $10 each. Buy one tree, the best possible stock you can find. Hunt around for it, but get the best possible tree you can get for $100 at that time. And if you've got 1,000, then get the best tree you can get for 1,000. If you've got $10,000, then get the best tree you can get for 10. Whatever it is, it doesn't make any difference. But just my advice to myself would be, don't go crazy on the hunt, trying to get trees for a collection. Just make sure you temper yourself. It takes a lot to earn $1 these days, and it's so easy to give it away in so many different areas that if you're going to put it onto something that you love, onto bonsai, that's going to be with you forever, then make sure it's the best possible bonsai that you can get. So as it develops over the years, you can be really, really proud of it. And if you can't get the best tree that you want for $100, keep saving your pennies. Don't blow the $100 on second-rate stock or on rubbish or on stuff that's never going to ever get there. Save the $100 and make it $200 in a couple of weeks' time or a month's time or a year's time, whatever it is, however long it's going to take you to get the amount of money that you want. But just make sure that your collection is exactly the way that you want it, because as I look back over my time in bonsai, I've said it before, time zips past. So you want to make sure that you're investing your hard-earned time and even harder-earned money exactly on what's going to put that smile on your dial. And it doesn't come from a million trees, I can guarantee you. It comes from possibly one or two really good trees in your collection that you keep looking at, that they're the ones that you focus on. That's where you've got to spend your hard-earned money. Don't go chasing the elusive and throwing away money on something that's just going to frustrate the hell out of you. And you'll look on at one point, I guarantee it, somewhere down the track and go, I've got to clear out my collection. I've got too many trees. I've got to sell some stock. I've got to move some stuff on. I've got way too many trees to look after, and nothing's ever getting finished. It's always part way through. I don't have enough time for this. I've got so much other stuff happening in my life, and I've got all these trees. I've just got to get rid of them. Well, the only person really you've got to blame is yourself, because you're the one that keeps buying the stuff or keeps picking it up or picks it up out of the bargain bin at the nursery centre and takes it home and thinks, yeah, one day this is going to be a great tree. And then next week, lo and behold, you're down there, bargain basement bucket again, and same thing happens. You've got another tree at home you've got to water and fertilise and repot, and ignoring the back corner of the yard that's never going to get there. So just draw a breath, think about it, as my advice goes to myself. Buy the best stock you can afford at the time, and it's all about quality, not quantity.
I spent my youth dropping coins in a wishing well. In hopes one day that I would find a story to tell.
Now, one thing that you learn over time with bonsai, and hopefully there's people listening to this that are in probably three camps. I'd say there's three separate areas. All right, so the first is that you start focusing on bonsai and you get obsessed, right? And when you look at a bonsai, a beautiful bonsai, the bonsai is your focus, where it's all you're focusing on is those beautiful branches, that lovely structure, the beautiful foliage, the flowers, the needles, the blah, whatever it is. The pot really doesn't seem to come into focus. And then there's a middle camp where you sort of start transitioning things from black plastic containers, black pots or terracotta pots, into bonsai pots. And the pot is something which is seen as necessary. It can be pretty, and it's not really the focus. The tree's still the primary focus, but the pot's sort of important. It's more about the size of the pot than the quality of the pot or the finish of the pot. That's your focus, right? So it's still a bonsai, but the pot's deemed as an evil necessity. I don't mean that. I'm tongue-in-cheek when I say that, but the pot's sort of not the primary focus. Then there's the last camp, which is when you've had bonsai for quite a long time and your bonsai start getting to a certain level, then the pot becomes a real primary focus for you and almost an obsession, where the better quality the pot, the better the make, the brand of maker, the location of the make, the finish of the pot, the unique features of the pot, whether it's got a large lip or it's got beautiful feet or outflowing edges or whatever it is. And the bonsai has to fit the pot, but you're in a state where you're buying or acquiring pots without really a tree in mind. So camp 1, pots probably come with the tree when you buy it. Camp 2, when you're transitioning or when you're repotting your trees after a few years, you'll buy pots for the trees specifically, but mainly to the right size. Camp 3, you love pots. You're obsessed with these bloody things that our bonsais go into. So you're buying them from anywhere. You see a nice one on Marketplace, yep, got to have it. That's a cracker. What's going to go in there? Not quite sure. Is the size right? Doesn't really matter. I'll have something that'll go in there somewhere down the track. Now, that the lesson to myself for this podcast would be pots do matter. Pots are as important to me as what the bonsai is. And I think that when you pair the two up and you get it just right, doesn't mean it's a forever relationship that the two have to have. The pot doesn't always have to be with the bonsai. Or, that pot can to migrate to another bonsai and still be just as good. But when they gel, when that when they come together, that's chemistry. That's beautiful. It's perfection at the highest level, and that's what I would tell myself is that pots are super important with your trees. Don't wait all those years to work that fact out. If you can start focusing on pots a lot earlier, then I think that from my point of view, my personal satisfaction with my bonsai would have accelerated a lot quicker. And I think that me traveling to see bonsai at different places and different shows and whatever, once your eyes are open to pots and to really, really good pots, you can look at, for me, I look at, let's say there's 10 bonsai on a bench and they're all within a certain radius of each other in regards to quality. The big differentiating point for me will be a beautiful pot. And, I mean, good pots, they do cost money. They're not cheap, and seems to be more and more expensive now over time. But there's something about them that really contributes greatly to my personal satisfaction when it comes to looking and admiring at my trees. And that's not necessarily for a show or for anything else, or not for anyone else's benefit. It's for my benefit that I get the real buzz out of it. And I'm looking around my office now where I'm recording this podcast, and I can see there's probably about 7 or 8 pots that I've bought over the years that have never had a tree in them that are bloody beautiful, just sitting in my workshop, in my studio. So, they will get to be used in repotting somewhere down the track. And I've got other pots stored in lots of locations, and I don't know what it is, but I seem to have, it's pretty common. I know exactly what it is. It's an obsession, but I have probably, I don't know, 3 times as many pots as what I need for my trees. So when it does come to repotting time, I've got plenty of choice. But I found that lately, as I get closer and closer to the perfection point with my trees, I find that when I repot and I try and consider other pots for my bonsai, they generally tend to go back into the same pot. That's normally a really nice pot that I've acquired, and over years I've fine-tuned, and the tree just seems to grow into itself more in a beautiful pot. And I find it very difficult for me to take that pot and put it somewhere onto a different bonsai. It's almost like a marriage made for the tree and the pot, and that's really important for me because, as I always say, bonsai's about me. It's not about you guys. I'm sorry, but it's what I get from my bonsai, and it's what you get from your bonsai, not what I get from your bonsai. So, you look at something, as long as the pot matches the bonsai, then that level of satisfaction really, really jumps away. And I would tell myself early on, it does matter. A $3 rubbish pot is not going to do your tree justice. And when you consider that repotting may not get done again for another 2 or 3 years, that's a really long time in your bonsai journey, or that tree's bonsai journey, to be stuck in rubbish. And as I've said, the way that you perceive and look at your bonsai will change the way that you work on your trees. And maybe spending a few more bucks on a nicer pot, something that's more in tune with your bonsai, will make you look at your tree differently, and that's a really, really positive thing. Another big one, and this is probably when I was going through this, I talked tools and about my skills and whatever else. I thought about the biggest thing that I've learnt along the way that I wish I'd learnt at the start. I wish it had been the first thing that when I said, I got that little twinkle in my eye and that spark going, geez, these bonsai, they're pretty cool, aren't they? Oh, they look beautiful. I love them. I might actually get a bonsai. And I wish that a little guardian angel jumped up on my shoulder and went, ding. Listen, numbskull, the one thing I want you to know, the very first thing I want you to know before you even touch a bonsai, before you go to a bonsai nursery, before you go and acquire and spend 1 cent, the very first thing I want you to know is it's all about the roots. And with the roots, it's not about water retention. It's about root growth. if I'd been told that at the start, rather than being misled that it's about water retention with my soil mix, then I think that a lot of trees, that possibly died that shouldn't have, or that never developed, or that never became what they should have become, or just never seemed to spark any interest in me. It's my fault. If I'd been told, if your soil mix is so important because your focus needs to be on root growth. If you get solid root growth, then water absorption, transpiration, that flow of water through the tree becomes a lot easier, a lot quicker. So you don't need water to remain in the soil mix for your tree to be able to get water when you water it. If you have a really boggy, wet mix, you aren't going to get root growth. If you don't get root growth, then your tree can't survive, it can't thrive, it can't flourish. You need solid root system to be able to do anything at all with your bonsai. And if you want healthy trees that don't get pests, that don't get burnt leaves over summer, that grow like crazy, that develop exactly along the path that you want, then it's on root growth, not water retention. That's your focus. It took me, I don't know how many years. I don't know how many trial and error, how much changing and, stuffing around and trialing this and listening to that person and then changing it and listening to that other person and throwing things in the bin going, black pines, can't grow them. There's a special secret to them. I don't know what it is, but someone will tell me one day. All that rubbish that you hear, and you probably said it yourself, being completely honest, that things get in the too hard basket and it's the species. Or it's, here's another good one. Oh, it's the pot. It's an unlucky pot. Every tree that I put in that pot dies. Huh? Is that true? I know I've said it to myself years ago. Years and years, I had one unlucky pot that I ended up chucking in the bin. I went, no, that pot's bloody cursed. Never grows trees, Everything I put in there dies. I look back now and think, oh, you idiot. It's probably a really nice pot that you chucked in the bin that you got angry with because of your own ignorance, because you are focusing on completely the wrong end of the scale, rather than focusing on root growth. If everything you did with your bonsai was on root growth, buddy, you'd have great trees. And I love my trees now. But I always think back and, about those missed opportunities. Oh, what if that one had lived? What would it look like now? Or, if that one had just developed the way it should have rather than that branch dying or the apex, that apex dying later on, and then I eventually, got rid of it. I know I can't turn back time, but this is exactly what this podcast's about, that I hope that I can, pass some of this on to other people, because this is honest to God what I would go back and tell myself in a heartbeat.
It's a burden that keeps me awake at night. We bless the sun 'cause it gave light to
The next thing I'd tell myself, and this is a really topical one. So I'm in Melbourne, Australia, and it's one of the southern states, and we've got this crazy weather pattern at the moment. It's, spring's always a bit turbulent for us. We get, tend to get lots of wind and a bit of rain and lots of growth and all that sort of stuff as the daylight hours get longer, and we generally get a bit more warmth. So lately we haven't had much warmth. It's been very cold. In fact, tomorrow's hailing. And the last day or so it's been, 80, 90, 100 km/h winds tearing through the place and branches coming down off trees and all the rest of it. And, I've been messaging with a few customers, few people I deal with in the bonsai world, and it's pretty consistent. How crazy is this weather? And one was like, oh, how'd you go with that wind last night? How many trees did you lose? And I went, no, I didn't lose any. Nothing blew over. I went out and checked them late last night, and this morning everything's okay and it's all looking good. So what about you? And he goes, nearly half of his stock got blown off benches last night and smashed about 25% of the pots. So he said at 2 o'clock in the morning he was repotting and tying trees back in pots. Now, our repotting season finished, a couple of months ago. A month and a half, 2 months ago, and to be repotting trees that were potted that period of time ago, that's a bit of a setback. If it's not done permanent damage, I'd be really surprised. And if it's only partial damage, then that's probably a best case outcome. And if there's no damage, then that's a miracle. But the thing I would go back and tell myself, my younger self, would be tie your trees down thoroughly. Don't tie your trees down thinking about a day where the wind's just gently blowing through the leaves. Tie your trees down like there's a typhoon coming. Like seriously, there's 150 km an hour winds coming through the yard, and if it gets hold of that foliage, what's it going to do to it? Now, I've had trees get blown off. I do get trees blown off. I have, tie downs break, but I certainly put my back into making sure that I've tied them down as thoroughly as I possibly can. So when I'm laying in bed and it's middle of the night, I do hear the wind and I think, I hope everything's going to be okay. But then I allow myself to go back to sleep because I know that I've done the best I possibly can with caring for them. And that includes tying them down. So when we repot, I tie my trees in thoroughly into the pot really, really firmly. So if they do blow off, chances of coming out of the pot are really minimal. And if the pot does break, then the root ball should stay fairly well intact. So I can then do a temporary repair and get things up and going again. But that's not something that I've always done. That's not something I've done over the last 35 years when I've been growing bonsai. It's probably more like the last 15 years I've done it properly. And before then, I'd sort of curse myself and pick everything up and repot at 2 o'clock in the morning and get things back underway again. And then the wind, tends to stop, things settle down. You forget about tying your trees down. You don't worry about it because everything's great. It's perfect. You get through summer, don't get a lot of windy days that are howling, and then autumn comes around and the winds pick up and bang, trees are on the ground again. It's like, how thick are you sometimes? You just don't learn from your mistakes. So I would definitely be telling myself that, you need to make sure that the little things, I talked a couple of podcasts ago about the 1%ers, and some of those 1%ers are the fact that you're looking after them before they need looking after. It's that preventative stuff that we do, whether it's spraying, fertilising, whatever it is, repotting it before it gets too bound and can't take any water up. All that stuff we're on the front foot about, which definitely includes things like tying them down, moving them to secure areas when there's going to be, say hail coming down, make sure the shade cloth's pulled over when there's going to be frost. All that stuff makes such a big difference. All those little setbacks that we get along the way that can not only damage your bonsai but can take the wind out of your sails. And once you get deflated with looking after bonsai, having bonsai, that it all becomes too hard and you throw your hands in the air, that's when you run the serious risk of potentially just walking away from it going, it's just too hard. They just need too much work. They need too much care. Whereas if you'd gone with, a 3 millimeter piece of aluminium wire that cost you about 20 cents and put a couple of loops around the pot around the bench and secured it with a pair of pliers, it would have taken you maybe, a minute, maybe not even a minute to do that. And then when it's blowing 100 km an hour winds and everything's coming down around the yard, your bonsai is going to be staying firmly planted on the bench where it is. So, it's really hard to pick yourself back up and get yourself going again. But I'd be telling myself, my younger self, don't even get yourself in that position. Make sure you're here on the front foot about all this stuff. If you look at your trees and they're always covered in bugs, I've always got this problem with pests on my trees. Oh, the bloody things, they're so sensitive. No, they're not. The tree's got something wrong with it. Like it's in a weakened state, which is why the bugs keep getting on there. Maybe you're not doing your job when you go and have your morning coffee and water your trees every day by looking there and saying, hey, there's the first sign of insect damage. All right, I'm on the front foot. I'm now going to, spray your trees, treat it, get onto a systemic so it stops them from coming back for a while. Look at the tree, assess it when it's needing repotting. If it's missed a repotting window, what can I do to get it to the next repotting phase without it becoming even more weakened so it ends up dying? There's so much you can do on the front foot looking after your trees that you shouldn't be in a position where you constantly feel like you're being flogged from your bonsai. Righto, so now the last couple of things that I would tell myself. This one, I'm not sure if I'd listen to myself, to be honest, but I'll say it anyway because, what they say about putting on an old head on a young body just never seems to work. But it would be, don't rush. Going slower can give you quicker results. If you just wait, if you let the bonsai let you know when it's ready for the next phase of work rather than constantly pushing it to your agenda, if you just drew breath, if you just waited, if you just, sat back and smelt the roses for a while, buddy, then I guarantee you that, it'll be okay. You don't need to rush to get to the next point, because that next point comes really fast, really fast. It's amazing that when you've got strong, healthy trees in pots, how quickly they can achieve your goals, especially if your goals are realistic. Like, I'm not talking, okay, I want the trunk to go from being 2 centimetres thick to 10 centimetres thick, go. Doesn't work like that. But if you talk about your ramification developing, or a sacrifice branch growing to thicken something, then these things, like, they happen almost in the blink of an eye. And just sitting back waiting can be so satisfying, mate. It's if I just tell myself, just watch it. Just watch the grass grow for a while. Let this thing just do what it's going to do and enjoy the ride. Enjoy the beauty of every single second of these things, because the seasons are so fleeting, that they come and go so fast that, now, looking, we're sort of a month down or 2 months down into spring. We've only got, 1 month left of spring before our summer officially starts. And then the hot weather's here. And, all that beautiful spring colour that we've currently got now, it's just so lovely and lush and green. And, I know when autumn or fall gets here that it's exactly the same thing. I love the colour of the trees, and the leaves seem to fall so fast. And the older you get, the quicker those leaves seem to fall off, and you're into winter again. And I do love every season, and I would just tell myself that just drawing breath and just waiting and allowing the tree maybe to get a year under its belt means that next year when you come back and look at it, or next season when you come back and look at it, or 6 months when you come back and look at it to do the next phase of its development, it'll be a lot stronger. It'll be a lot more ready to do what you want it to do than if you just keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. The only way it's going to go is one way, and it's going to get weaker and weaker and weaker, and next thing you're going to be turning around going, it was whatever reason my bonsai died. It was too hot in summer, or there was pests on my tree. It was whatever. It's not. It's probably your impatience, mate. If you just sat back and drew breath and you weren't that impatient fella, that young man in a hurry that kept trying to, or kept wanting to push things as fast and get to the end point as quick as you possibly could, then you'd be there a long time ago. So just draw a breath yourself, mate. And the last point that goes hand in hand with this one is, don't ever wish time away, ever. Don't ever wish that your bonsai was at another phase. Don't ever wish that this would just develop. Don't ever wish that, that was thicker or whatever. It is what it is for now, and enjoy it. Enjoy every second. Enjoy what you've got in front of you right now, because you just never know what's going to happen. And I'm not trying to make this a big, deep, meaningful podcast. So I'm being completely honest. Those 100k an hour winds. I had a big branch come down in the backyard last night and missed my trees by about 10 centimetres. So I look at it and think, should I move those trees? No, they're in a perfect spot. I can't really control what the tree above does when it gets hit by strong winds. So, I'm just thankful that nothing was damaged on it. And, if I was sitting there wishing a branch would do this or would do that, and then I come out the next morning, it snapped off, well, then I know I'm going to be quite, disgruntled and a bit hurt, I suppose, that the tree's never going to get to where it should because that damn windstorm came along and snapped the branch off. Well, I just think it's beautiful as it is now. And if the branch had taken, if the tree falling, that dropping that branch had smashed the branch off, well, it'd still be a beautiful little bonsai. As I've said many times, just a chance for a forced redesign, which I'll never forget and I'll never begrudge, because what will be will be. So don't ever wish a second away. Just seize every second. Do everything to the best of your ability. Just make sure the quality of what you've got that is the best that you can afford at that possible time. Make sure your skills are on point. Make sure you're perfect at what you do, and make sure that you get good guidance. The right people in your corner that want you to get to the next level, that are going to support you and just give you the correct advice for what it is that you want. And don't be an idiot with your tools. Look after them. They're what's going to help you keep and maintain and get your bonsai to a certain level. So just putting in that extra little bit of care takes nothing, but it means so much more to your bonsai. So there's some of the basics. I'm sure there's about a million other things I'd tell myself, to be honest, that that I could improve my bonsai journey with, but they're the big ones. They're the ones that I hope ring a few bells for people that are listening to podcasts and can possibly help you too, and maybe just alleviate some of those things on your shoulder, especially the people that are relatively new to it, that what you're going through is completely normal, and that you don't, as I said, with the quality of the tools that I buy the best that I can afford at the time. You don't need to spend $1,000 on a pair of scissors just to make them good scissors. You can buy very good scissors that are a lot cheaper than that, but you need to maintain them like they're $1,000 pair of scissors. That's the point I'm trying to get through. So yeah, that's what I would tell my younger self. So as always, thank you for listening to the podcast. It's honestly really nice to know that this podcast is listened to by so many people and gives so much enjoyment. And I strongly encourage you, if you want to get in touch with me, please do. Please reach out on any of the socials, Instagram, Facebook, probably the easiest two, and I will get back to you. I promise you. And if I don't, as I was messaging someone this morning that I'd overlooked a message, please just give me a nudge. If I will never deliberately ignore a message. So if I don't get back to you in a timely fashion, just, hey, Scott, I haven't heard back from you. Can you let me know what you think? And I will definitely tell you what I can do when I'm able to. So please keep the messages coming. They're great. They're fantastic. Really appreciate it. And it's really nice to know that it's a good podcast for a lot of people that enjoy bonsai, that probably love them as much, if not more, than what I do. So another thing too, there's a bit of a plug for a big convention, a bonsai convention in Australia, in Perth, in 2023, that I'm on stage for, which is great. So it's all official. There's some publicity coming out for it. So if you check out, I've done a post on Instagram and on Facebook about it. There's some early bird tickets available for those in Australia, although anyone around the world is welcome to come. And Perth's a beautiful place, so it's sure to be an amazing convention. In fact, the convention location is world class. So have a look at the advertising for it, because there are a few international guys coming as well. So it should be an awesome event in May 2023. So keep your eyes open out for that. But as I said, thank you for listening in. Thank you for sticking around, making it right the way through this podcast, which was a bit of a tap on the shoulder from a younger self. I appreciate it. And any questions at Bonsai, come let me know. And until next time, happy bonsai.